welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. My guest today is Ariel Sullivan, who wrote a book that is going to appeal to many. I think, many who have grown up with, I guess, Hunger Games and also Divergent, and they have a little hole in their heart for that, and they want something of age for them, but that also deals with some of those topics and expands upon them in a way that is both well written and also very, very relevant. Conform. Yeah. Ariel, welcome so much to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Again, we're very much looking forward to talking to you about this book because I think a lot of people are going to be talking about it. I think it's going to take off. First of all, in your own words, if you were to give just kind of a nutshell about what Conform is about, your main character and just the world that she's in, what would it be?
Okay, so this is so funny. I always struggle with this question because I joke that it's giving, you know, future readers a puddle, when for me this world is like an ocean. But this world takes place in the future, post a world war that almost wipes out all of humanity. And in order to save mankind, they establish a procreation agreement where your worth is in your genes and your ability to create offspring. And you are divided into three different levels. You're either a genetically elite, a minor defect, or a major defect. And this determines whether you live up in the clouds, on the surface, or beneath the ground. And this story follows Emmeline, who is a minor defect, and she sorts art in the ancient art archives while she waits to be deemed worthy for a procreation agreement. And she's an outcast and struggles with conforming. And you just follow her as she enters a procreation agreement and then also meets a man from this rebellion that's brewing. And she has to pick a side not only amongst these two, but in society itself.
So that is a very good elevator pitch, and it does spin off a lot from there. Emmeline is really interesting, and I do have to say, her job, as you described it, was also very interesting. Um, what I'm curious about is
Mhm.
your inspiration for everything. What drove the story? How did you come to it?
Yeah, I think, a lot of great art, unfortunately, is made from really dark times in people's life. I started writing this in the heart of COVID, and I was also dealing with postpartum depression after my second child. My days were really dark, and all of a sudden, the world outside, because COVID hit 6 months into my second's life, all of a sudden, the world outside reflected kind of what I was trying to hide on the inside. And this created this perfect kind of storm of this question where I started to wonder what would happen in society if life as we knew it stopped existing. Because we all didn't know what was going to happen at the time. We were all in unprecedented times. We were all locked away. There was no human connection. And that really spoke to me. And then as people started to really rely on their health, almost as currency, the healthier you were, the more you could go. Um, that really spoke to the inspiration to this. And then all of a sudden, vaccines and different things happened, and a divide was created. And that divide really shook me because in the beginning, we were all fighting for this humanity and this light. And then, maybe it's just human nature that darkness comes in, the divide takes place. And I felt like we were all yelling at each other rather than listening. And all of a sudden, I had this idea of what was being lost in the gray. And for anybody who's read the book, understands that the minor defects, who are stuck right in the middle of this rebellion and these elite and the Elum, all wear gray. So that was inspired by that. So it really was a reflection of what I saw around me and my interior world. And sometimes I think the hardest conversations are best approached and had wrapped in fiction because they are less intimidating.
I also found it just kind of interesting that Emmeline, the contract she enters into is not even with an elite, it's with an Elam, which is above the elite as well.
Yeah,
Do you want to talk just a little bit about who they are in the story?
yeah. So the Eloom is a select group of elites who prioritize the function of society in ruling it rather than procreating. So they are their own subset within the elite who show the most promise and care more about the greater good. And she is matched with Colin, who is the youngest Elum, and it hasn't happened in everybody's living memory. So all of a sudden, she's the center of speculation for not just the minors for being chosen because she is a minor defect with a visual defect, but also amongst the elite. So just in being chosen, she already stirs up the narrative.
So I am curious about your approaches to world building. How did the world of Conform, we know how ground one started,
Yeah.
as you explained, but how did the world sort of expand? Like how did the hierarchies come into play, and just the landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you go to world building, it can seem really overwhelming. But for me, the simplest thing that I do while I build it is for every action, there's a reaction. It's a very simple blanket statement, but if you hold it true into each level that you create, you can create a world that has great depth while being flexible. And then you can also cherry pick what's relevant to the main character's story, but also creating it as a whole so it feels stable. For this one, I just loved the idea of a linear approach. Obviously, that is comes across when you realize the elite live all the way up in the clouds where they're physically untouchable. They don't even see beneath the cloud level for what is happening on the surface, which is very barren and very strict for the minor defects. And then the major defects are an illusion all of themselves because they're supposed to live in low town, but she comes to find out they're actually dwelling beneath the city completely hidden. And so that level allowed me to kind of play with how those different levels interact, why everybody was in that level. And I cared about the world building so much that my next book is a prequel where it takes you back to when the world is made so that you can really see how it comes together. And that comes out in March.
Wait. Okay. Rewind a little bit because it's not going to be any surprise to readers who are, familiar just with the genre that this is going to end on a cliffhanger. And that's not at all a spoiler
No.
because, I feel like this is what we want. This is what we've come to expect. And we know that this has got
Hmm.
series qualities in it. You'll be reading it and there's so much there that you're like, this is not going to wrap in one book. But so you dropped that cliffhanger and you're going back to the beginning with your next
I
one.
am. I am. I know it's cruel. And I understand that some readers are going to be so upset, but I did write a book called Conform. So the fact that I can't conform should come to a shock to no one. I was so enthralled with the world building that a simple document where I was typing away about how the world came to be turned into a trilogy of its own. So I am inviting the readers to be angry with me. It'll serve them well when they meet the characters in the next book because their world is completely upended. But yeah, the next book is a prequel that will interweave with Emmeline's story so that it's very interactive for the reader.
That is awesome. Wow.
Thank you.
Full of surprises.
Yeah.
So what I want to know is, and this, I suppose, leads into what you were talking about and just sort of the way that you build things and work things. Do you know the twists that are going to happen in the story before they happen, or do you sort of like, did you drop yourself into Emmeline's place and discover them with her?
Um, yeah, so I guess it'll be long-winded, but I've been asked if I'm a plotter or a pantser. And I think I'm neither. I consider myself a mapper where I understand the journey and the main destination, like the end goal I know. And I know all the main hits along the way. What I don't know and what I like to do is really understand my characters and not just my main characters, the side characters as well. So I understand, what they want more than anything, what they'll lie for, what they'd kill for if we come to that. I really like to know their quirks so that while I go from point A to point B, I kind of let it flow in the sense of I have no idea if we're going to take the scenic route, if we're going to get a flat tire. I don't know if we're going to come to an inn with one bed and we're all going to freak out over that. So yeah, it's very much I know what I want to say and I know the main parts, but how we get there, I do like to have freedom in that because I think it allows for a better flow and a more captivating story.
No, for sure. And I don't really fault anybody in the way that they write. It's all very interesting. I've anybody who's listened to my interviews here know that I've kind of like not a like fallen away from using the term pantser. I like either MacGyver writer or discovery writer.
Hmm.
But Mapper is good too. Like there's also I think writing where like you can see like almost like the skeleton and you need to figure out where all the muscles are, to make it into something.
Yeah.
And it is all very interesting. And I was curious because there is a lot of intrigue in this story, as one might assume. I mean, if you're going to write a story about a rebellion, and there's none, you're going to be very surprised. That in and of itself is a surprise. But that
Yeah.
does something you said leads me into something else. There are a lot of side characters. There's Emmeline, and there's Colin, who's the Ilum, who she's in contract with, and then there's Hal, who is the mysterious defect who she meets and plants a few seeds in her mind of what society could be. But as far as the side characters go, was there any side character that you became attached to that maybe you were surprised that you liked that much?
Um, yeah, I think I am a sucker for a side character as a reader and as a writer because they add so much depth and you can explore so many things through that side story. And the character that I love the most in Emmeline's world is actually Gregory. He is by far my favorite to write. He is fun. He keeps me on my toes. And I am obsessed and in love with Gregory and Nora's side story. So much so that one day they should have a trilogy of their own. So,
Ooh, exciting. Wow.
yeah.
That's actually cool because I liked Gregory too.
Did you? Good.
I did. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I did. I really did. So I guess another thing I want to know is so now that we know that where the story came from for you and just everything, um, what like is this the first thing that you've really sat down to write, or have you kind of been writing for a while?
I think as long as I can remember, I've wanted to be a writer. I read The Phantom Tollbooth when I was like 7 or 8, and I was so enamored with how he turned words on their head and how he made them characters and personified them. And from then on, I have said to everybody who knows me, I'm going to write stories one day. I wrote a lot of poems, a lot of short stories as a kid. I dabbled in a Hermione Draco fan fiction when I was a preteen, teenager, which was a lot of fun. And then there's another series that I have on the back burner, but this is the first one where about 7 chapters in, I was like, this is something I think people are going to want to read and that I want to share. And the place it got me out of, I had touched briefly that I was in a pretty bad postpartum depression cloud, I'll call it, when I started writing this. Conform really is the ladder that I dug myself out of that with. Like I was not in a good place. I had nowhere to go, both mentally and in the world. And I was like, well, this is this is it. This is the best chance I'm going to have to do this. I might as well go after it and see what happens. Um, and that's kind of what inspired that first little sentence when you open the book saying, I've never been good at anything. And that just tailspun into where we are today.
Um, Before we close, I'm curious what you like to read or watch or engage in. What is some of your favorites?
Yeah, I am an avid reader, and sadly and very depressingly, I am not reading right now because I feel like subconsciously it might work its way into my story, not on purpose, but like you see a beautiful passage, you're like, oh my God, I love that. And then like you'll sit to write and you're like, oh no, that's not mine. So I haven't been reading any fiction recently, which is killing me because I do. I think the escape in fiction, I think the topics that you can approach in such a approachable manner are so beautifully done. Um, I grew up reading Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Divergent. I loved a good fantasy. I loved Lord of the Rings. Um, as an adult, I've really gotten into a lot of nonfiction. I'm a mother of two young kids, so I do read a ton of parenting books. I don't know many of us who don't, who are into reading. Um, and then I also love self-help books. Right before I started this, I read The Mountain Is You by Brianna Weist, and it was beautiful and so well done. And I recommend it to anybody who feels like they're the person that's in their own way, because that's definitely what was happening for me for the majority of this process or this dream that I had. I did read Akhtar, big fan of that. Big Cassian fan for anybody out there. He's by far the best Bat Boy. But yeah, it just depends on my mood. I will read just about anything. I also read When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate when I was writing this, and I thought that was also very beautiful for a nonfiction piece. But currently, my TBR is Out of Control. And when I finish the follow-up to Conform, which is almost done, knock on wood, I will take a month off and I plan on reading through everything. So if anybody has great suggestions, send them to my Instagram or email so that I can have some fun.
Thank you so much. Conform comes out, is it October 15th?
October 14th.
October 14th. Conform comes out October 14th. Check
Yes.
it out from your local library, run to your favorite bookstore, and be ready to be hanging on that cliff because we're going to go back to the beginning, it sounds like.
We are, but you will not be hanging on the cliff for too long. You should have about a year in between. So next October you will have the follow-ups. I'm kind of treating the prequel as a little surprise in between.
Nice. All right. Thank you, Ariel Sullivan. This was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast, and we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.